reside in the elevation of the individual above the state and the elevation of the law above the government. In other words, in constitutional freedom. Now, you might say, oh, but those are universal values there, or at least they're Western values. No. How did they become universal values, right? Imagine that the Second World War had ended differently. Imagine that the Cold War had ended differently. There'd have been nothing universal about them then. These were values overwhelmingly developed in the language that you and I are now talking. And they were exported, through, if we're honest about it, through a series of military victories by the English-speaking peoples, and thank God they were. Imagine if those conflicts of the last 100 years had ended differently, and we were living in a system that elevated the state over the individual. There was nothing universal about
Let's say a couple of things. First of all, I always think it's useful. The former Bishop of Edinburgh, Richard Holloway, had a very good line on this. He said that the opposite of faith is not doubt, but certainty. And I think it's worth bearing in mind. Look, I just wanted to mention also, comes back to something I said earlier, but the period we are in of churn and rethinking about what exactly is what the Prime Minister has been writing about this morning. Everyone's trying to nail these values down. And one of the things about this is, and I think it's just the reaction to Andrea's comments, a good example of that. Nobody, it seems, is very keen on admitting where, I speak as a secularist, but nobody's very keen on admitting the Christian origin of some of these things, and I think we have to be frank about that. We can't write our heritage out or pretend it was something else. And just very quickly, one of the things that is being done on this, which has come up several times this morning, is this attempt to sort of encompass everybody in the new values. Sometimes, it's all freedom, good, openness, great tolerance, yes. It's all fine. There is a risk, however, in this, and it comes back to the thing about always highlighting gay marriage and other things. Again, something I'm supportive of. But there is a risk in this that we build up this new value system on extremely wide ground, because it's ground we want to be as wide as possible to encompass everyone. But it might also be ground that's very shallow. And I would suggest that some of the things we're talking about, if you identify your country solely on some of the lines we're discussing at the moment, it could yet prove to be, and this comes back to the point the lady in the back made, it could prove to be too shallow for some people, and I think that's something we have to think about.
Well, Peter, you say in your column today, this whole thing about, okay, the gentleman that wants to say something, then I'll come to you, Peter. You're very insistent, so let me just bring the microphone. Oh, very quick, we'll run out of time.
I'm a 91-year-old gay man, following what these gentlemen have said. I'm living in a relatively friendly gay city of Brighton. I'm in an 18-year-long loving relationship with my partner. I campaign to combat homophobia. I used to say to people, please understand. I've been married, had 3 children, I've got 3 grandchildren, but I've always been gay. People have said to me, you can't possibly be gay. I didn't choose to be, I am gay. Now, I stopped asking people to understand because I don't understand myself. So I now say to people, please accept homosexuality.
A fine oration, sir, and it's lovely to have you in the studio.
Well, that was certainly an impassioned speech by that gentleman. 91 years old? Wow, he certainly didn't look in his 90s. I would have probably said, I don't know, late 70s, early 80s. I mean, he looked pretty good for being 91. A young whippersnapper. Just coming out there and telling it like it is. Giving his life story, being gay. You know what, folks? Hey, everybody has a right in their privacy of their own home to do what they want, to teach their children what they want, to accept what they want, to not accept what they want. It's when people start telling everybody else, you can't do this, you can't do that. We all have our opinions. We all have our opinions on gay marriage. We all have our opinions on straight marriage. We all have our opinions on, trans women, trans men. Everybody has, right? The question becomes is that, are you going to, force your opinions, your ideals, your values onto somebody else, and vice versa from the other side? Are they going to try to force you to accept their values? You don't have to accept their values. You have to accept the lifestyle. You don't have to accept anything at all, whether it's heterosexual or homosexual or asexual or whatever. But you can make your you can say, I don't believe in this, or I believe in that. That's okay. I don't think it's okay, but if you want to do it, that's fine. But don't force it upon me. That's all. And what Douglas was talking about basically is that if you're trying to bring your values in society and make them as wide as possible to encompass everything is okay, those roots that you're trying to put down, they're not going to go too far. They are not going to go too far. That's why religious roots go very, very deep. And they're hard to shake because they don't have that wide expanse. They go down deep. Sometimes in fertile ground, sometimes in not so fertile ground. But like we said before, the Western democracies in Europe, Great Britain, America, Canada, Australia, I'm just talking about these countries where they do allow you freedom of religion, freedom of choice, freedom to practice what you want to practice. Certain things obviously within law, but whatever you do inside your home is pretty much okay. Anyways, folks, that's what we're bringing to you today. That's what's on tap. You're watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I'm your host, Dr. Nasir, where I give you my political prescription from my political perspective of what happens when everything collides. Douglas Murray, social media, religion, Peter Hitchens, the big question, government, policy, politics, they all come crashing together. Let's get to more of the big question with Douglas Murray right now.
We have to believe in something.
Well, we can't teach and avoid. And actually what's given us our freedom and our flourishing is our Christian heritage, is the backdrop of our Christian faith. To believe in nothing, to believe in nothing, to believe in existentialism, to believe in
freedom?
Yes,
can't we believe in democracy?
those ideals come from a Christian backdrop.
But ancient Greeks believed in democracy.
That is what served our that's actually
there has to be some moral absolutes. For example, when I'm teaching my children, do this and don't do that, I have to tell them this is wrong, this is right, but the reasons for right and wrong are these. Yep. So we give them absolutes, as I think, and I also give them rationale. Without giving the kids absolutes, they'll be very confused. I believe, and this is an experience I've had with my eldest daughter, she's 8 now, 8 years of teaching children has made me more convinced that there are more needs for absolutes. Secondly, if the society didn't have absolutes, we'd all be doing all sorts of things without coming together on a plane that would govern us and create a cohesive society.
But as a faith leader, is it your duty, sorry to go back to this,
that's okay,
to bring beliefs up to date? Or
contemporary interpretation of your text, as far as I'm concerned, as a Muslim, is a must. Yes. I can't not, it's wrong of me not to. The concept of ijtihad, which is a very fundamental principle of Islam, and that is to constantly renew the verdict that's been given to make it more relevant to the world in which you live, 21st century.
But not to the extent that you would say equal marriage is okay. You would stick to ancient beliefs on that.
There are certain principles of faith. For example, if somebody says, can you please abolish prayers? Can you please end fasting in the month of Ramadan because it falls in the longer days in June? Can we take it to December when it's shorter? We can't do those changes because these are absolutes in the Quran, and that's what makes Islam distinctly Islamic. If you take them away, you might as well not have Islam. So I'm saying contemporary interpretation would imply, how do I practice my faith? For example, in Norway, where the sun doesn't set.
So what about equal marriage? Would that be something you say that's an absolute?
As far as I'm concerned, Islam doesn't accept that. And those who do, we must allow both the sides to remain to their views. I can't change anyone's view. I believe in one, somebody else believes in something different.
Yeah,
and that in itself creates the level playing field in which we tolerate.
And that's
that good reason why the state is secular, because he's got the right to say that, and the state will conduct equal marriage. It will conduct marriage between a man and a woman and a woman, and it will not listen to that unless he wants to do it in his home. He can follow that view, but the state is not obliged to take any religious side on this, and that's called equality before the law.
You say in your column today, you described this, I mean, I said nailing jelly to a wall, this finding a definition of Britishness. You described it as squelchy. You know, it's impossible to define. What is Britishness to you?
It is impossible to define. You can only define it by the way in which it's been destroyed.
So what does Mr. Cameron mean? What's he talking about?
He doesn't know what he means. He's simply talking for political advantage. The difficulty that these people have is that the nation state, which I very much support, is the largest unit in which it's possible to be effectively unselfish. We have that, Now that we don't necessarily share either a religion or a language or a belief in certain customs and laws, we don't have it. It's a regrettable change that's overtaken this country, but one which is obviously irreversible. How we work out how to live with our new neighbours in peace and harmony is going to be very difficult. I don't think it's going to be British. I think we've lost that. It's going to be something else. We can mourn its loss, but to pretend that we can recreate it by speeches...
I think British values are actually remarkably easy to define. They reside in the elevation of the individual above the state and the elevation of the law above the government. In other words, in constitutional freedom. Now, you might say, oh, but those are universal values, though, or you say Western values. No. How did they become universal values, right? Imagine that the Second World War had ended differently. Imagine that the Cold War had ended differently. There'd have been nothing universal about them then. These were values overwhelmingly developed in the language that you and I are now talking. And they were exported, through, if we're honest about it, through a series of military victories by the English-speaking peoples, and thank God they were. Imagine if those conflicts of the last 100 years had ended differently, and we were living in a system that elevated the state over the individual. There was nothing universal about it.
Rabbi Laura, I did promise Rabbi Laura.
There are two ways to say British values.
British
You can
value.
say British, you're out, or British with warmth. So let's say British values is a warm thing based on universal values, and therefore it's expansive.
Miriam, you agree with that? British values, squelchy or quite clear? Squelchy, Peter, quite clear, Daniel. I don't mean that personally.
I think where Peter's right is that there is, and it's been expressed by others, but there is obviously a debt to Christianity in this country, and there's no reason to pretend that there isn't. Why wouldn't we acknowledge that? It's part of the history, but there's also, you know, a debt to other trends and ideas, and acknowledging that is part of recognising that what it meant to be British in Peter's parents' generation is not what it means to be British today.
Okay.
And to be inclusive means acknowledging the new voices in that discussion, in the redefinition of what it means to be British.
Adnan, Britishness, what's it all about?
I'm a proud Muslim. I'm proud to be British. I love being in Britain. It's a tolerant society. The British people are very tolerant and loving people. I want to keep it that way. And what's happening right now is that some bigoted politicians are making look this country ugly. It's a beautiful country. It must remain so. And I defend the freedom of every single individual who lives here according to the law. Thank you very much.
The final word.
Ajmal, last word, I think.
To me, Britain has given me what it should have given me. To me, Britain is more Islamic than most Muslim countries. And that in itself says a lot to me. It's where I can be who I am. I can be free to express myself. I can have my children grow. I can be proud of my neighbors. I can be proud of everything. But do you know what? Some of these values are universal, and I want to be a proud citizen of the world where these values are practiced by everybody.
Okay, well, I think we are going to get one last word, and that's going to be from
I just want to say
30 seconds.
It's a feeling, and we love being here, and that feeling is what we need to promote. So everyone wants to make this country better and safer and more secure going forward for our future generations. It doesn't have to be far.
I want to end it there because we're ending on harmony. Before we all go to lunch together. Believe that, you'll believe anything. As our debate continues on Twitter online, end of the series, we're back next year, January.
Well, just another great discussion amongst people, pretty much civil. And obviously that conversation was happening in the context of what's happening in terms of tolerance and intolerance within British society. But that can be expanded to any Western European nation, to the United States of America, to Australia, to Canada, to others. Do you think that these types of conversations would be having in China, in Japan? No, you know why? Because those societies are 99, of course they are. They're 99.9999% Chinese, 99.9%, Japanese, Korean, Vietnamese, Malaysian, Indonesian. Ethnicities, heritages. There's very few other minority people in there. Blacks, Hispanics, Latinos, Cubans, Europeans, both white Europeans, darker Europeans, Indians, Mideasterners, Arabs, Scandinavians. Where are they in those Asian type countries that we're talking about? Where would you rather be living in? and having practice like this. Everybody towards the end basically was saying, Peter Hitchens said, you know what was being taught and what was being believed and sort of practiced and was thought as British values by his parents maybe has dissipated a little bit. I think that's just going to continue to erode as the eons go by. I mean, for example, parents of immigrants, my parents from India, and they migrated to Pakistan during the war. My dad came here when he was like 21 years old. My mom was about 16, 17. We're second generation over here. Somebody asked me about India and Pakistan. I go, yeah, okay. So there's nothing I hold in terms of my, where I'm holding on to, the mother country, of my parents. No, my mom and dad, they came here, they became Americans. Now, yes, they were born in India. They have a love for that country. But if somebody asks me and says, India, yeah, it's a place where my parents were born, but it has no ties to me whatsoever. So my parents and grandparents, they probably could have said, oh, you know what? Our kids, they have no tether. They have no ties to the country. They don't care about it. It doesn't mean anything to them. Of course not. Why would it? We weren't there. So these are the types of things, and as people are bringing their cultures, their religion, their language, their foods, their thought processes into Western European democracies, into the United States of America, and whatever, tolerance is a two-way street. And this is what we have here, folks. We've got to find a way to live together without encroaching upon each other in terms of saying, this is what you need to believe, this is what you don't have to believe, this is what I want you to do, this is what I don't want you to do, you have to do this, no, I don't want to do that. Somehow, that tolerance has got to come together. Otherwise, as society, as we're seeing right now, things are breaking down, not just on the religious end, but on every other end too. Culturally, politically, ethnically, all of that is happening. Anyways, folks, we appreciate you taking the time to watch. You've been watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I've been your host. My name is Dr. Nasir. If you haven't done so already, we'd love for you to subscribe to our channel. If you find the content something that you like, share it with others. Like, share. You all know what to do. Take a look at our other video content here and below. My final thought, as always, when you're right, you're right. And when you're left, you're wrong. Until next time, folks, take care and stay safe.